East Rutherford did not wait for Bruno Mars to take the stage before the celebration began. On the opening night of the romantic tour at MetLife Stadium, DJ P.We and RAYE turned the pre-show atmosphere into a major event of its own, setting up an electric crowd for the headline performance that followed. For fans arriving at MetLife Stadium on August 21st and August 22nd, the expectation was simple: see Bruno Mars return to a massive New Jersey stage. But before the first notes of the headline set, the stadium was already becoming part of the story. The official lineup for the 4 MetLife dates includes Bruno Mars, RAYE and DJ P.We, with the shows scheduled for August 21st, 22, 25 and 26. The venue lists doors opening at 5:30 p.m. and the concerts beginning at 7 p.m. The first 2 dates have now taken place, while 2 more shows remain. And the opening moments revealed something important about the scale of this tour. This was not designed to feel like a traditional concert where the audience waits quietly for the headliner. It was designed to build. DJ P.We, the DJ persona of Anderson.Paak, was the first major piece of that build-up. For longtime Bruno fans, the appearance carried an additional layer of meaning. Anderson.Paak is not simply another touring musician in Mars' orbit. He is Bruno's partner in Silk Sonic, the Grammy-winning duo whose chemistry became one of the most celebrated collaborations in modern pop and R&B. Seeing Paak behind the DJ booth therefore created an unusual feeling in the stadium. Fans were not merely watching an opening act. They were watching one half of one of Bruno's most important musical partnerships help prepare the room for the other half. That connection matters. DJ P.We brings a different energy from a conventional support act. His persona is rooted in DJ culture, vinyl, groove, soul, and the history of funk and hip-hop. Instead of immediately presenting the audience with a second headline-style performance, the set helps establish the musical world that surrounds the main show. And that world is deeply connected to Bruno. The audience at MetLife did not have to wait until the headline performance to encounter the musical DNA that has helped define Mars' career. Then came RAYE. The British singer-songwriter arrived at MetLife carrying her own remarkable momentum. Known internationally for songs including Escapism, RAYE was making a particularly significant appearance in East Rutherford because the moment represented another major step in her rapidly expanding career. After opening the first night, RAYE shared her reaction with fans online. She described the experience as her first stadium opening for Bruno and thanked the New Jersey crowd for what she called a beautiful welcome. That reaction tells its own story. For an artist accustomed to commanding a stage, walking onto the floor of a stadium built for tens of thousands of people is a completely different challenge. The scale changes everything. A performer can no longer rely only on intimate facial expressions or the energy of a small room. Every movement has to travel. Every note has to reach the upper levels. Every moment has to compete with the sheer size of the building. And yet, according to the response surrounding the opening night, RAYE found a receptive audience. Her presence also helped establish the emotional contrast of the evening. DJ P.We brought the groove. RAYE brought vocal intensity. Together, they created a bridge toward the main attraction. Then the lights changed. That was the moment the entire purpose of the opening acts became clear. The audience had been prepared. By the time Bruno Mars was ready to appear, the stadium was no longer warming up. It was waiting. There is a reason the return of Mars to a full headline stadium tour carries so much weight. The MetLife performances are part of his first full headlining tour in nearly a decade, following the massive 24K Magic World Tour that launched in 2017. That gap matters. Bruno has remained highly visible during those years. He continued releasing music, collaborating with major artists and performing enormous shows. His work with Anderson.Paak as Silk Sonic became a defining chapter of his career. His collaborations with Lady Gaga and Rose generated enormous global attention. But a full headline stadium tour is different. It places the artist alone at the center of the entire production. No co-headliner. No shared billing. No short festival appearance. The entire night belongs to Bruno. And that is precisely why the atmosphere before his arrival mattered. The audience had spent hours moving through different musical moods before the main performance even started. DJ P. We established the rhythm. RAYE raised the emotional intensity. Then the anticipation shifted toward the artist everyone had come to see. The transition is one of the most important parts of any stadium concert. A great opening act does not simply fill time. It changes the temperature of the room. By the time Bruno walks out, the audience should feel like it has been waiting for something inevitable. MetLife appeared to reach that point quickly. Fan discussions around the August 22nd show indicate that DJ P. We appeared around 7:10 p.m., RAYE around 7:50 p.m., and Bruno around 8:50 p.m. Those timings are based on audience reports rather than an official published set time schedule, so they should be treated as approximate. But the sequence tells us something useful. There was a deliberate progression. First, the DJ. Then the vocalist. Then the headliner. And when Bruno finally appeared, the opening chapter was over. The main event had begun. What makes this particularly interesting is that the opening acts were not randomly selected names placed on a tour poster. They fit into the larger musical identity of the Romantic era. Bruno has always understood that pop superstardom depends on more than hit songs. It depends on atmosphere. His performances borrow from soul, funk, R&B, pop, rock, and classic show business. The influence of artists such as Prince is obvious in the way he approaches the stage. The emphasis is not simply on singing a song correctly. It is about creating a moment. Leon Thomas, who toured with Mars earlier in the year, recently explained just how seriously Bruno approaches that process. Thomas said he would finish his own 30-minute set, clean up, and then sit near the engineer to watch Mars' performance and take notes. He was particularly struck by Mars' attention to detail, recalling that Bruno could rehearse the same song repeatedly during soundcheck to make sure even a tiny detail was right. Thomas described that precision as a major reason Mars' performances become so memorable. That observation is revealing because it comes from another performer who had a close view of the production. From the audience, a stadium performance can look effortless. From backstage, it can look completely different. There are countless details happening simultaneously. The band has to be synchronized. Lighting has to hit at the correct moment. Video elements have to match the music. Camera operators have to find the right images. The stage has to move. The performer has to remain connected to an audience that may stretch across an enormous stadium. And Bruno has to make all of it look natural. That is perhaps the central contradiction of his live performances. The harder the production works, the easier it is supposed to feel. The audience should not see the machinery. They should see the magic. That philosophy was already visible before the first headline note at MetLife. The opening acts created a sense that the night was not simply another concert stop. It was an event. For East Rutherford, that distinction was significant. MetLife Stadium has become one of the most important entertainment venues in the New York and New Jersey region. It is capable of holding enormous crowds, but a stadium's size can also create a challenge for performers. A show can be technically spectacular and still feel distant. Bruno's reputation is built around doing the opposite. His greatest strength has always been his ability to make a massive audience feel personally involved. That is why the opening sequence mattered so much. The audience needed to become emotionally connected before Bruno appeared. Anderson .Paak helped establish that connection through music. RAYE strengthened it through performance. Then Bruno inherited the momentum. There is also an emotional component that should not be overlooked. For many fans, this was not simply another concert. It was a long-awaited return. The Romantic Tour represents Mars' first full headline stadium tour in nearly a decade. That makes the MetLife shows a milestone not only for the tour but for the audience itself. Some fans have waited years to see him perform a full-scale headline show again. Others discovered his music during the years between tours. And a new generation is experiencing the spectacle for the first time. All of those groups arrived at the same stadium. All of them were waiting for the same entrance. That is why the title of this story feels almost inevitable. MetLife did not literally need Bruno to begin exploding. The anticipation had already done the work. The opening acts created the first wave. Then the headliner created the second. There is another reason the appearance of Anderson .Paak is particularly significant. Silk Sonic demonstrated that Bruno is at his strongest when he surrounds himself with musicians who understand groove and performance at the same level. The partnership with .Paak allowed both artists to explore a retro-inspired musical language while maintaining a modern pop sensibility. Now, during the Romantic Tour, .Paak appears in a different role. Not as Silk Sonic. Not as Bruno's duet partner. But as DJ P.W. That distinction gives the opening a subtle narrative quality. Before Bruno performs as a superstar, one of his closest musical collaborators controls the room. It feels almost like a backstage handshake between two eras of the same story. And then RY enters the picture. Her presence broadens the musical palette again. She represents a younger generation of sophisticated pop and soul artists who have built global audiences without abandoning musicianship. The combination creates an unusual but logical progression. Classic groove. Modern soul. Then stadium pop. It is a carefully constructed emotional staircase. And the final step is Bruno. The audience reaction to RAYE also demonstrates how quickly an opening act can become part of the headline story. Her emotional response to the New Jersey crowd was not just promotional language. It reflected the unusual pressure of performing before a stadium audience that had largely come to see someone else. Winning that audience matters. It means the opening act becomes part of the memory of the night. Years from now, fans may remember not only the moment Bruno appeared but the feeling inside the stadium before he arrived. That is the real power of a strong opening lineup. It creates memories before the headline performance even begins. And this is where Bruno's role becomes even more interesting. A superstar of his level could easily treat the opening acts as background. Instead, the overall lineup reinforces the musical identity of the tour. It says something about what the audience is about to experience. It says groove matters. Vocals matter. Live musicianship matters. Performance matters. And above all, the audience matters. Because ultimately, the biggest star in a stadium is still dependent on the crowd. Without that reaction, even the most expensive production can feel empty. MetLife provided the opposite. The crowd arrived ready. The opening acts gave them something to respond to. And by the time Bruno appeared, the atmosphere had already reached critical mass. The remaining MetLife shows on August 25th and August 26th will provide 2 more opportunities for that same sequence to unfold. DJ P.W. Ray. Then Bruno. But after the first 2 nights, one thing is already clear. The Romantic Tour is not treating Bruno's return to stadiums as a quiet comeback. It is treating it as a major pop culture event. And East Rutherford has become one of its most important stages. The opening acts may have shocked the audience with how quickly they could command a stadium. But their greatest achievement may have been something else. They made the audience ready for Bruno. They built the anticipation. They created the rhythm. They opened the emotional door. Then Bruno Mars walked through it. And that is when the real spectacle began. For the fans inside MetLife Stadium, the night was never simply about waiting for a superstar. It was about watching an entire musical world come alive around him. DJ P.W. established the groove. RAYE proved she could stand in front of a stadium and own the moment. and Bruno arrived to collect all that energy. The result was a powerful reminder of why stadium concerts remain different from almost any other form of live entertainment. Thousands of people can arrive as strangers. For a few hours, they become one audience. One voice. One rhythm. One shared memory. And in East Rutherford, that transformation started before Bruno ever appeared. The lights may have belonged to him. The stage may have been his. But the night began with a different message. The opening act was not just an opening act. It was the fuse. And when Bruno finally stepped into the spotlight, MetLife was already burning.